So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Nadia Rubai. I'm one of the co-directors of the Institute for Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention, or what we call IGMAP, at Binghamton University. And I'd like to welcome you to the first of what is scheduled to be a full week of activities and events in collaboration with the Parents Circle Family Forum, which during this week we'll be delving into stories of loss and reconciliation in a way that's intended to help us understand in a new way the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, consider transferable lessons to conflicts closer to home, and appreciate individual level pain and suffering, as well as power and agency within the atrocity prevention realm. So I'd like to start by acknowledging that Binghamton University and IGMAP sits on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee people, specifically the Onondaga and Oneida, and then I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Cayuga. Land acknowledgements are an important part of everything that we do at IGMAP, but particularly relevant in light of the topics that we're talking about today, that we're engaging given the centrality of land disputes as part of this longstanding conflict. Among many other things, IGMAP tries to ensure that atrocity prevention is not merely an academic area of study, but rather that we engage directly with the people who are doing the work of prevention, broadly defined, around the world. These are people who in large and small ways, and often in very creative ways, are dismantling systems built on hate and dehumanization, and in doing so are building societal resilience, promoting peace, and reducing risks of mass atrocities based on identity. So we're joined today by Bassam Aramin and Rami Elhanan from the West Bank and Jerusalem, respectively. And in registering for this event, you would have seen their brief biographies, but the written version really doesn't do justice to either the depth of their loss or the power of their reconciliation. You need to hear the stories directly from them in their own words. And so I'm not going to repeat those introductions. I'm going to let them tell their stories. I would ask that to create a sense of community during this conversation, that if it's possible for you to do so, you turn on your video so that they can be talking to people, not black boxes and names, and that you keep your audio muted during this time when they are talking. After they share their stories, we will have time for questions and answers and discussion, and I'll ask at that time that you use the raise hand function so that we don't have everybody talking at once, and then I can recognize you or they can recognize you, and at that point you can unmute and ask your question. So Bassam, Rami, I'm going to turn things over to you to decide how you'd like to proceed.
Well, thank you so much, Nadia. We are always fighting who is going to be first. I always lose, but this time I will be first. Hello, everyone. It's early evening here in Jerusalem. My name is Rami Elhanan. I'm 71 years old, graphic designer, living in Jerusalem. I was born in Jerusalem, 7th generation. My mother was born in the old city of Jerusalem, an ultra-Orthodox Jewish family. My father came to this country in 1946 after spending 1 year in Auschwitz. He was very badly wounded in the 48 war. She was the nurse that took care of him, and this is the reason why I'm able to speak to you right now. I am a Jew, I'm an Israeli, and before anything else, I am a human being. The story I will tell you this evening starts and also ends on one particular day of the Jewish calendar, which is known by the name of Yom Kippur. You know, Yom Kippur for the Jews is the holiest day of the year, and this is the day where you ask forgiveness for your sins. On this very day, 47 years ago, I was a very young soldier fighting this horrible October 73 war. We have started it with a company of 11 tanks. We finished it with only 3. I've lost over there in the desert of Sinai and across the Suez Canal some of my very close and good friends, and I came out of it a very angry and bitter and disappointed young man with one determination: to detach myself from any kind of commitment or involvement. I got out of the army. I went to Bezalel Art School to become a graphic designer. I got married and I had 4 kids. And 46 years ago, on the very eve of Yom Kippur, September 1983, my daughter was born in Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. Her name was Smadar. The name Smadar is taken from the Bible, the Song of Solomon. It means the grape of vine, which means the opening of the flower. And she really was a very sparkling and vivid and joyful and energetic little girl. She was an excellent student. She played the piano. She was a swimmer. She was a dancer. She was really amazing. Everyone used to call her the princess. And we lived a very good life in our house in Jerusalem. My wife, which is a professor for education in the Hebrew University, my 3 boys and this princess, in what seemed to be the perfect sheltered lives. I was doing graphic design for the right wing, for the left wing, whoever paid me. And life was relatively comfortable and beautiful. And this went on until about 24 years ago. On the 4th of September 1997, just a few days before Yom Kippur, this bubble of us that we were living in was blown up to millions of pieces. 2 Palestinian suicide bombers blew themselves up in the center of Jerusalem, killing 5 people that day, including 3 little girls. One of these girls was my 14-year-old Smadar. It was a Thursday afternoon and the beginning of a very long and a very cold night, which continues until today. At first, when you hear about the explosion, you keep hoping that maybe this time this finger will not turn towards you. Gradually, you find yourself running in the streets trying to find her. She completely vanished, disappeared. And you go from hospital to hospital, from police station to police station, many long and frustrating hours, until eventually very, very later that night, you find yourself in the morgue and this finger is stuck right between your eyes and you see this sight, which you will never ever be able to forget for the rest of your life. And then you come back home. The house is filled with thousands of people coming to pay respect, to offer condolences. These are the 7 days of the Jewish mourning period. It's called Shiva. You are kind of enveloped by these thousands of people in a very clever traditional way that is designed to ease your passage to the new kind of life which expects you. On the 8th day, they all go home, go back to their normal everyday businesses. Suddenly you are left alone. You need to wake up. You need to stand up and face yourself, and you have to make a decision. What are you going to do now with this new unbearable burden on your shoulders? What are you going to do now with this anger that eats you alive from within? And there are only 2 ways to choose from. And the first one is obvious. When someone kills your 14-year-old little girl, you are so angry and you want to get even. This is natural. This is human. This is the way most people choose, the way of revenge and retaliation. This way that creates this endless cycle of violence which never stops. But then after a while, you start to think, you know, we are human beings. We're not animals. We can use our heads. You start asking yourself questions. Will killing anyone will bring her back? Will causing pain to someone will ease this unbearable pain? Well, the answer is certainly not. So in a very gradual and complicated process, you come to the other option, which is much more complicated. Trying to understand what happened here. Why did it happen? How could such a horrible thing take place? What can cause someone to be that angry, that mad, that hopeless, that he is willing to blow himself up with 14-year-old little girl? Do you have some kind of connection or responsibility yourself? And then the most important question of them all, what can you do personally in order to prevent this unbearable pain from other people, from other families? Well, it's not easy. It takes time. It took me almost a year, foolishly enough, at the beginning. I thought I could go back to my studio, to my work, live a normal life, pretending as if nothing had happened, but nothing was normal anymore. I was not the same person anymore. And about a year later, on some occasion, I met a big man who changed my life completely. His name was Yitzhak Frankenthal. He was a religious Jewish guy, you know, with a big kippah on his head. And you know how we tend to put people into drawers and stigmatize people, and we judge them by the way they dress, what they put on their heads, around their necks. And I was certain that this guy, Yitzhak Frankenthal, was a fascist, a right-winger who eats Arabs for breakfast. I prepared myself to fight him. And we started talking. He told me about his son, Arik, a soldier who was kidnapped and murdered by Hamas at 1994, and about this organization that he created of people who lost their loved ones and still wanted peace and searched for peace. And I looked at him and I remembered that this guy, Yitzhak Frankenthal, was one of these thousands and thousands of people that came to my house during those 7 days of mourning a year before. And I went crazy. I was so angry with him. I asked him, how could you do it? How could you step into someone's house who just lost a loved one and talk about peace? How dare you? And he was not insulted. He just invited me over to watch a meeting of this group of crazy people. And I got a little bit curious. I said, okay. And I went to see. It was 24 years ago. I was standing aside, very detached, very reluctant, and very cynical, as I always am. And I was watching the people coming down from the buses. And from the buses came down people that, for me, as an Israeli patriot, were always living legends, people I used to look up to, I used to admire, I used to read about them in the newspapers, and I never ever thought that one day I will become one of them. People who lost their loved ones and still wanted peace and searched for peace. But then I saw something else. Then I saw something which was completely new to me, to my eyes, to my mind, to my soul. I was standing there watching the Palestinian bereaved families coming down from the buses, walking towards me, shaking my hand for peace, hugging me, crying with me. And I was so completely shocked and so deeply moved. You see, I was 47 years old at the time. And until today, I'm ashamed to admit it was the first time ever in my life I have met Palestinians as human beings. Not as workers in the streets, not as terrorists, and not as transparent people, as human beings who carry the same burden that I carry, who suffer exactly like I suffer. And I was so deeply touched. I remember seeing this old Arab lady coming down from the bus with this long black traditional Palestinian dress. And she had a picture of a 6-year-old kid on her chest, exactly like my wife, Nurit, carried the name of our daughter, Smadari, on her. I'm not a religious person, I'm afraid. I have no way of explaining what happened to me back then, 24 years ago. All I can tell you is that from that moment on until today, I devote my life to go everywhere possible, to talk to anyone possible, people who want to listen and people who will not listen, to convey this very basic and very simple message, which says we are not doomed. This is not our destiny to keep on killing each other in this holy land of ours forever. We can change it. And we can break once and for all this endless cycle of violence and revenge and retaliation. And the only way to do it is simply by talking to each other, because it will not stop unless we talk. I believe deeply that one can teach himself how to listen. I believe deeply that once you are able to listen to the pain of the other, you can expect the other to listen to your pain. And then together start this very long journey toward reconciliation some kind of peace in the end. This is a long and bumpy road, no shortcuts. But this is the only way possible, because the other way leads to nowhere. And the price of the other way is really unbearable. So this is what we are trying to do, my brother Bassam here and the 600 families members of this unique organization. We bang our heads against this very high wall of hatred and fear that divide our two nations today. And we put cracks in it, crack after crack. And through these cracks, a little light comes in, and a little light can drive away a lot of darkness. Until we will put those walls down, because the alternative is horrible. And we have an enormous ally on our side, which is the power of our pain. You should know that the power of pain is tremendous. It's very much similar to the nuclear energy. And like this horrible energy, you can use it in order to bring darkness and destruction and death to people. And you can use it in order to bring light and warmth and hope. So we go around the country, we go around the world, we speak to Israeli kids, we speak to Palestinian kids, we speak to everyone. And we tell them that our blood is exactly the same color, that our pain is exactly the same pain, and our tears are just as bitter. And if we, who have every reason on earth to hate each other, if we who have every justification to want to kill each other, if we can call each other brother, anyone can, anyone should. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Rami. Thank you.
ده أبو إليك يعطيك العافية.
الله يعافيك.
Thank you, Nadine. As you prepare your breakfast, think of others. Don't forget to feed the doves. As you conduct your wars, think of others, of those who seek peace. As you go to pay your water bill, think of others, of those who only have the clouds to drink from. As you speak freely with metaphors, think of others, of those who lost their right to speak. As you go home, your own home, think of others. Don't forget the people of tents. As you think of others, distant others, think of yourself and wish you are a candle in the darkness. Those words is a song of Mahmoud Darwish, our national poet. I grew up under brutal occupation. People that you don't understand their language, you don't know why they come to control your country, your neighborhood, your village. And you need to be a fighter without going to school, not to study how to fight them, just to fight them, to be against them. Because occupation creates resistance. Any occupation will create resistance. So at the age of 13, I found myself as a fighter with other 4 kids. We start by raising the Palestinian flag, which was a crime in that time. You can go to jail for 6 months to 1 year. But we find it as the easy way to make those strangers crazy. Of course, we start to write on the walls against the occupation, with the freedom, with the independence, even without understanding what's the meaning of independence. Our goal was not to create a Palestinian state, because for me, I didn't understand that. So we want to feel safe as kids. This is the whole idea. At the age of 16, we find some old weapons in a cave, including 2 hand grenades with other military materials that we don't know how to use it. two of my friends throw the two grenades on the Israeli soldiers, patrols near Hebron, our village. And of course, in that time, no one killed, no one injured because they don't know how to use it in a professional way. At the age of 17, we have been arrested and I sentenced for 7 years. I learned in jail, if you know your enemy, you can defeat him or you can kill him. If you only hate him, you will kill yourself. So I started to study Hebrew to know how to defeat or to kill my enemy. Then I watched a movie about the Holocaust. The Holocaust for the Palestinians and most of the Arabs, and I believe the Muslims, it's a big lie, simply. Never happened, especially 6 million. It's part of the Israeli propaganda just to create more empathy in Europe and the States and to justify their crimes against our people. But in spite, it's a big lie. I want to enjoy seeing this movie to see how the Jews suffering, to see someone occupied them, killed them, whatever, because they occupied us, because I'm in their jails. And after a few minutes, simply, I found myself crying, it's sympathy with those innocent people. I start to hide my tears from other prisoners. I didn't expect to see such atrocities. It was very difficult for me to understand how could human beings do the same to other human beings. But I decide that I want to know more about this Holocaust, if it's happened or it's just a big lie. It takes many years, so long, until 2010, 2011, I make my master's degree about the Holocaust in Bradford University in the UK. Then you understand that if you know more, you act better. If you don't know, so you remain maybe as a victim to your education, to your history, to your suffering. It was a very long 7 years in jail. Everything in jail pushes you to take revenge and to be violent. Their goal is to kill our humanity every moment. And our goal is to survive and to protect our humanity in order to continue our struggle, our way to free our land. It's not revenge, it's not hatred, it's a way of life. We are freedom fighters. They are not our example, they are occupiers, we are different. And it's very important to justify your struggle, your way, in a moral way against the other side. As I said, everything around you pushes you to be more determined to continue your way, your armed struggle against this enemy, because there is no one to talk to. The Israelis, the Jewish people that we know, are the jailers and the settlers and the Israeli soldiers. Those are the Israelis that the Palestinians met and know. So I get released in 1992 after 7 years, and I still believe in armed struggle. Of course, 93, we have Oslo Agreement for the first time between PLO and Israel. Then you start to ask yourself questions. Why I spent 7 years in jail if our leaders can sit down and shake hands and make such agreement? Why they didn't make it 20 years before? We can save thousands of lives from both sides. You are not, you didn't live alone in this world. And I am part of my people. It let me think about our way. More than 100 years, we are trying to kill each other and to defeat each other. In spite, Israel, with the support of the whole world and United States of America, against the Palestinians. But we forget to die. We're still here with more suffering, with more blood, with more victims. And maybe through negotiations, we can achieve some peace. In fact, in one point, I decide that I am not going to use or support armed struggle because it doesn't work. We use it, we try it. Especially now we have peace process, we need to go towards peace. And the best way is to start with yourself and with your family. So I start to be active in my society, in the Palestinian side, without any connection with the other side. Until 2003, I hear in the Israeli media about something called refuseniks, which is ex-Israeli soldiers and officers who refuse to serve the occupation. They refuse to serve in the occupied territories because they love Israel, because they want to live in a moral place. They don't want to be part of this occupation against another people. And I wish to meet those people. And 2 years later, in 2005, we have the first meeting between 4 Palestinians. I was one of them. They are ex-prisoners with 7 ex-Israeli soldiers and officers. Rami's son was one of them. This is how I get to know this noble enemy in 2005. It was the most difficult meeting for each one of us. You are going to face your killer, your occupier, your jailer. And for them, they are going to meet their terrorist, their killer. It was very difficult. Simply takes 1 year meetings, and each time a new ex-fighters joining us until we become 300 members in the end of the year. We decide to create a movement. We call it Combatants for Peace. And our slogan was what Nelson Mandela says. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you need to work with your enemy. Then he became your partner. And we want to prove that there is a partner in the other side. We start to work together in both sides, in Israel and in Palestine, to say that we are your fighters. We fought in your name, for you. We change our mind. We change our way to achieve the same thing, because we discovered that we want to kill each other to achieve the same thing. We want peace and security. Of course, each one from his point of view. And according to Rumi, when he says, beyond right and wrong, there is a field. Meet me there, or let us meet there. So we decide to meet. Maybe we can work together, maybe we can survive together. 2 years later, in the 16th of January 2007, an Israeli border police shot and killed my 10 years old daughter, Abir. She was my 3rd child in the front of her school. From a distance of 15 to 20 meters in her head from the back. She was with her sister and 2 other girls. She fell down, and 2 days later, she passed away in Hadassah Hospital, where she born, and where Smadar born and died. Between Abir and Smadar, it's 10 years. But it's the same killer, the same criminal who take off the lives of our daughters. It's the Israeli occupation. It's the violence. It's the victimhood mentality and darkness. In fact, 2 days later, I joined the parent circle because I know Rami 2 years before. I know their message, those noble people, brave people, but in my worst dream, I don't want to join this amazing group. So at that time, I have no choice. As Rami says, it's very easy to take revenge and to think about revenge. But simply, you are not going to change the world or end the case. You will create another victim, and you will become a killer by yourself. You will become a victim to the violence and darkness. And in fact, after I release myself from the victimhood mentality, I have no enemies to conquer. I hate no one. So I said to the man or the soldier or the hero who killed my daughter, you are the victim, and you are not less victim than your victim. When I met him after 3 years in the Israeli court, I said to him, I don't want to take revenge because I don't take revenge from victims. And because I love my daughter very much. And because I have another 5 kids, I don't want them to grow up as victims to you. In the parent circle, we are more than 600 families, as Rami says. And our voice is very loud to say we no more revenge. And we are not cowards. We fought before. But because we love our kids, we love our other kids, we don't want them to die. As I said, we want to spread a very simple message that we can be partners at least. We don't need to love each other, we don't need to hug each other, but at least to be a partners. Always I said, you can enjoy hating me forever. In the end, you will have heart attack, but respect me, my right to exist, my right to live, my right to be free. But we prove through our joint activities that we can be real partners. We can be friends. We can be brothers. And in our case, we can be family. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Bassam. Thank you, Rami. I think everyone now can appreciate what I was saying in the introduction about the power of hearing the stories directly from these individuals. So it's hard to follow up and jump right into questions, but would you, either of you, be willing to share a little more information about how you engage with the parent circle in addition to these kinds of conversations? Bassam, you mentioned, talking with school children, Palestinian and Israeli children, and speaking around the world. How do you try to get your message to policymakers? How well is it received, or how are you received in those contexts? And while you're responding to those questions, I'll ask that others, if you have questions, please just raise your hands. I think we have a reasonable sized group where we can engage everyone in the conversation.
Rami's department.
Usually we say to the audience that we have a secret agreement between us, that all the difficult questions will go to him and the easy questions to me. And this is really an easy question. So the Parent Circle is an organization who is very much active, as I said, in the effort to put cracks in the walls of hatred and fear that divide our two nations. So we do it in a wide spread of activities. The most important activity of them all, we do lectures at high schools, most of them in Israel, some of them in Palestine. There is no equation between the occupier and the occupied, and it's much more difficult to give those lectures in the occupied territories, but we are trying to do so. This is the most important and most influential activity of them all, because no one can listen to us and remain the same. And we do thousands of these lectures to a wide range of audiences, like soldiers, like youth, like people at school, like house clubs, youth clubs, everywhere where people invite us, we talk, and it's a very important activity. We have narrative groups, which we bring together Israelis and Palestinians up to 10 groups a year to meet each other, to listen to each other, and to be able to work together towards peace. We have until now more than 2,000 alumni of these groups, some of them working together, do projects together, which is a great success and important to us. We have a very strong women group that do a lot of work on the ground between themselves and creating messages outside. For the last activity of the women group was creating a book of dried flowers from the graves of their sons, given as a present to Vice President Kamala Harris in light of the International Women's Day. And it got a lot of attention and very good media. We have a youth club, a summer camp for our kids every year, in which we bring together our sons, our daughters, to an activity which is on behalf of the parent circle. One of the most important activities occurs every year in the alternative memorial ceremony. Each year in the official Remembrance Day for the victims, we remember the victims of both sides. It's very difficult, you know. The Israelis said to us, "Well, are you crazy? Are you going to remember those who killed us in the blowing buses?" And the Palestinians tell us, "Are you crazy? Are you going to remember the soldiers who killed us?" And we say, "No, we remember the victims of both sides. And the only way to move forward is by remembering and respecting each other." So it creates a huge emotion. It creates a lot of reactions. Some of them can be violent, but we do it every year. We started with 200 people about 10 years ago. Last event was on Zoom because of the coronavirus, and we had more than 2,000 audience to this event. This event will occur in something like 3 weeks from now.
Rami, 200,000.
200,000. Didn't I say 200,000?
You said 2,000.
No, 200,000, of course. Of course. It was transmitted through the Facebook and the media, and it huge impact. And we are very proud of it. And we are going to celebrate the same ceremony in about 3 weeks, and you are invited to watch it. Look for our publications in the media. And we do many, many, many more activities. Brother, if I forgot anything, please remind me.
You just ask about how the politicians receive our message. You know, politicians are politicians. Nice people. They work for themselves. You know that we have the fascist government, right wing in Israel for many, many years. And we have no problem with the Palestinian Authority or the Palestinian politicians, but they have no power, in fact. They support us. Me and Rami and others, we visit the president maybe 3-4 times. So they support us, but again, they have no power on the ground. So it's a huge difference, as Rami said, between the Palestinians and the Israelis as politicians or government.
We have questions from others, or do you want me to continue? I don't want to cut people off. So in terms of reactions and engagement outside of Israel and Palestine, what are you partners with particular groups? Have you been effective in getting access to, I accept Bassam's characterization of politicians and at the same time recognize that we have to push for changes using the systems that we have, in addition to trying to push from the outside. So I'm wondering if any of those political leaders in other countries have been more receptive to hearing your message and then having a different way of engaging on an in the international arena.
You know, after Oslo agreement failed so dramatically, and the failure was so painful, we understood that you cannot impose agreement on top of people without the support from below. So we believe that the best way to do it is to start working from below. When we speak to high school kids, when we spoke to the wide range of population in Israel and in Palestine, we show an example of things that can be different. And we are trying to create this pressure from within on the politicians to do the right thing. It's a problem. It's a problem with the current politicians because most of the Israeli politicians are right-wingers. Most of the Palestinians are not really politicians. The Palestinian leader needs a permission from the Israelis and the Americans to move from one room to another in his own palace. And frankly, there are subcontractors for the Israeli security services to deal with the security problems and not much more. And this is the problem with the politicians today. What we are trying to do is create awareness to our activities. We are highly respected. People, as I said, cannot listen to us and remain the same. And we believe in long-range targets. I mean, it will not happen tomorrow morning. We are in a very dark night today. And, you know, Martin Luther King said that only on the darkest of nights you can see the stars shine. We are the stars.
If you ask about the politicians outside or leaders or parliaments or Congress, yeah, we meet hundreds of them. And of course, we get answers. You will never hear them in the media. We know that beyond the walls. Of course, they understand it. They believe in our message. And this was our goal. We ask everyone to be moral, just to go according to his values. When we talk about freedom, it's everywhere. Democracy, it's not only for the Americans. It's everywhere. So unfortunately, it's not only Israelis and Palestinians. We have many players, and until they had enough blood shed from us, maybe they will push for a solution. It's the same solution. It's the only solution. But when it will happen, we don't know. We need to do our best to work every day in order to have the courage to look into the eyes of our kids and grandsons and daughters to say we did our best to achieve peace.
Thank you. Carrie, you've had your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you both so much for sharing your story with us and for the work that you're doing. One of the aspects that seems to make the conflict so intractable is the way that past atrocities and the memory of past atrocities is invoked in the present, relating both to the Holocaust and to the Nakba. I'm curious how you engage with the memory of those two atrocities in the work that you do and in talking with the communities you talk with.
Rami waiting for me, yeah?
Always.
I will repeat this, always I say it. I said, it's really, how you use our pain and our memory and our history. always I said the Palestinians didn't kill 6 million Israelis. And the Israelis didn't kill 6 million Palestinians yet. And there is a German ambassador in Tel Aviv. And there is an Israeli ambassador in Berlin. So if you stuck in the memories of the past, simply they escape from the responsibility of the future. It's the victimhood mentality. It's how they control the people, not to think, only to be afraid, to scare them. We need a brave leader to lead us forward, to look into the future. We cannot improve the past because it's over. That's it. We can talk about the Holocaust another 75 years. And the Nakba, we can talk it about 75 years. We are not going anymore just to be in the same pain. So this is our message, in fact, not to forget the past because it's part of us. But we need to build on this bloody past, painful past, to look forward, to exist together, to live together, because we have no other choice, which is very difficult, by the way, but it's logic.
I will just add to it that I belong to the Jewish people, and we really carry on our shoulders 3,000 years of victimhood. It's a real victimhood, and we are victims. We are the ultimate victim. We cannot help it. It's under our skin. We are born with it, and it's part of our DNA. Not only this, we are in love with our victimhood. No one else is allowed to be victim. And we send our kids to Auschwitz when they are 16 years old. And when they come back draped with the national flag and the slogan, never again. And the next day they find themselves standing in a checkpoint. And this 18 years old kid has to make a decision whether this 70 years old guy going towards him is a terrorist or just a grandfather, which is inhuman. And it's a personal decision. We have, as Bassam said, we have to look forward. Bassam is studying the Holocaust. Many Israelis are studying the nature of the Nakba. We cannot deny the past, and we cannot forget the past. But we should use the past as a tool to live better for the future, as a tool to respect each other pain. Then we can move forward. Otherwise, we are stuck in the past and in the victimhood mentality. And for myself, I make a decision that I will not use my victimhood in order to victimize other people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Max, I see you raised your hand.
Hi, yes, again, joining with everybody to thank you so much for being here and for telling us your stories. I mean, this came up a little bit in your presentations, but I wondered if you both could expand on something that I was wondering. It seems like on the one hand, such a personally difficult work that you do, and yet it's so powerful that it seems to me that it could be so fruitfully exported to deal with the ongoing legacies of other kinds of atrocity violence elsewhere in the world. And so I wonder how that aspect of your work has developed over time, of other people who've had similar losses in other conflicts, looking to you, or you reaching out to them, or you networking with them to try to establish parallel or similar kinds of projects in other parts of the world that could obviously also really benefit from this kind of honesty and this kind of personal dimension. Thank you.
Absolutely. We do a lot of work on this field. We are in connection with several universities around the world, Georgetown universities and others, to create a mutual understanding of the what connects us as human beings. and the way to fight this racism, this genocide, these problems that that unify us, that makes us the human beings. We have a study group in our organization that all its purpose is to create connection with people like 9/11 victims and others, not in our names, the Black women all around the world. We have connections with all around the world with people who understand the pain and can work with us towards a better future. Absolutely, we do a lot of work in this field.
And we have the American friends of the parent circle, we have the British friends of the parent circle, and the German friends, and the Danish friends, in order to spread the message, because it's not a Palestinian and Israeli message only. It's for everyone. How to use our pain in a different way, not only for revenge.
Thank you.
Others, students, I know we have some students on here who are often shy to speak up. I don't want to cut you off.
Don't be shy, we won't eat you.
It's a quiet group today. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, Rami and Bassam and everyone, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. I have a couple of questions that I'm curious when you spoke about speaking with people, hitting your head against the wall, and going to people that may not want to listen to you and others that might be more receptive. How do you go into these communities to share your stories? How do you decide which groups to go to? Curious about the responses you get, whether immediate reactions or later following up. I'd be happy to hear more about how that works.
You know, we said we don't want to convince anyone to follow us. This is our story, our experience, and we want you to open your eyes before, as Rami said, that your bubble will blow up, to understand the situation, not to be a victim to yourself, to your narrative, to your story. And we don't care who's our audience. We talk to anyone, to everyone. Imagine I take Rami with me to Jenin, and we meet with the Al-Aqsa Brigade with their guns, imagine. And he was the first Israeli that they talked to him. We scared that they are going to kidnap both of us, but we are human beings. When you talk, when you have this dignity and honesty, this is your weapon. In fact, even the people who don't agree with us, they respect us. But it's not easy at all. And you say to them, it's not to love the enemy. It's not to sell yourself to the enemy. The hero of heroes who make his enemy as a friend. So we become friends in both sides. Not only friends in the social level, we are fighting together as partners for peace between our kids and the new generations. Always I say Jerusalem is a very holy place for the Muslims. Every Muslim around the world wish to die and to be buried in Jerusalem without any connection with the Christians or the Jewish or the Zionists. We believe Jerusalem will be the paradise in the last day. This is a faith. You cannot play with it. You cannot do anything with it. It's a holy place for the Christians. It's a holy place for the Jewish people. It's the paradise for the Muslims. Even though we kill each other for Jerusalem, but we meet each other under Jerusalem, under the ground, in the graves. And I don't believe that Jerusalem know who we are. So we need to decide who is more important, our lives or the holy stones of Jerusalem. But it's a very logical, it's a very simple thing. Always I said, The Israelis will never leave this safe place after 3,000 years of their history of slavery and discrimination and anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. And the Palestinians, after 3,000 years from tonight, we will never, ever accept the Israeli occupation or Israeli control or whatever you call it. So as long as the occupation continues, unfortunately, we will continue to sacrifice the blood of our kids, both sides. So we want to free Palestine, but we want to free Israel also from the victimhood mentality, from to be oppressors. This is our experience, as I said, and Rami always said, no one listen to us and remain the same, no one. It's very difficult to be against our message. And we can see the new generations in our organization who participate in our activities. They want to follow us. They want to be with us. They believe in us. And this is something to be proud of.
I'm going to jump in, Joseph, I'm going to interject a question quickly. Obviously, your organization is one where you don't want to grow the membership because the means of becoming a member of the parents' circle is not something that anybody, any more people should have to become part of. However, obviously, you also want to grow the number of supporters and people who hear your message and are willing to work alongside you. What are you seeing in terms of the response from younger people? I know you both made reference to that. At the same time, you told personal stories that said even though you were exposed to information from others before these life-altering, turning upside down your lives events, you didn't hear them before then. You didn't hear them until you were ready. And unfortunately, it took incredibly horrific events to be ready. How are you seeing young people respond? Are they, because what we see in the United States is some people are much more open to what the United States is going through in terms of racial reckoning, want to kind of break down those barriers. But there's another group that is getting more and more strident in their anti-Semitism, their white supremacy, racism. Do you see that same kind of divide when you're talking to people, young people in particular?
When we step into a high school class, me and Bassam or any other couple of the parent circle, they are not as polite and receptive as you are. In so many ways, you are walking into the open mouth of an active volcano. There is a sea of blood between these two nations, a lot of emotion. And for most of them, it's the first time ever in their life they see an Israeli and a Palestinian which are not fighting each other, which are not putting their pain on the table, trying to compare whose pain is bigger, to blame, who is to blame. And this creates an earthquake. And the earthquake creates a crack in the wall. You need to understand that those kids, Israelis and Palestinians alike, are going through a socializing process. They need to be able to sacrifice themselves when time comes by joining the army or one of the armed groups. And the only way to do so is by hiding the other side and demonizing the other side to the state that it will be no problem for a young Israeli soldier to pull the trigger and kill a 10-year-old girl, or for a young angry Palestinian to blow himself up with a 14-year-old little girl. This is all part of an educational system, which is part of nationalism and identity and the mentality of a football group. If you're not with me, you are against me. So the essence of our work is exactly this. the ability of us to show them the humanity of us and the respect that we have towards each other, it gives them another direction, another opening. And the fact is that, as I said earlier, no one can listen to us and remain the same. And the reaction that we get is amazing. You open our eyes, you change our lives, you should run to politics, and so on. So it's not easy. It's sometimes very difficult, but this is the only way.
Thank you. Joseph, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I did. Thank you guys for coming in and speaking. I just have a quick question to ask regarding Palestinians. How would you reach your message that you're trying to send to Palestinians that are dispersed around Israel and Palestine? For example, Palestinians in refugee camps in Jordan, Syria, or Egypt and Lebanon, or even Tunisia. How are you able to target the message to those people as well?
Unfortunately, we are not allowed to go there. But we can touch them through media, social media, their reactions. They throw something like a paragon, the last book wrote by Callum McCann about our stories, translated now to Arabic. And we can meet them in Europe, in the States, through our speaking tools. And their reaction is amazing, simply. They encourage us, they support us, and we can see it as I said, we don't go to Syria, we don't go to Iraq. We didn't give lectures in Jordan, the refugee camps. So this is...
But we went to Dubai, we went to Morocco.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So there are some limits, I guess, to where you could deliver your message, I presume. But also, I don't want to really be in the position where, well, I'm not in a position where I can give suggestions, but I guess maybe doesn't the UN go, for example, to those camps where they could deliver the messages? They could be like the middleman, I guess, or I don't know.
The refugee camps,
one way.
The UN, they deliver food, not messages. They need tents. They need protection and medicine. They have a lot of messages to explore.
Okay. All right. Thanks for answering.
You are welcome.
Max, is your hand raised again? No? Others who have questions? What would be the most useful, supportive action on the part of young people or institutions in the United States? I'm not talking governmental institutions, I'm talking academic institutions, organizations of young people, civil society organizations. Is the message about supporting within the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Is the message one of looking at your own situation and looking at your own dehumanization of others and trying to be, as Bassam has said, more moral in everyday activities? What do you strive for as the takeaway that people have after engaging with you?
I think this is the most important question of them all. And the underline is, what can we do? And usually I answer it like this. I'm a son of a Holocaust survivor. My late father was an Auschwitz graduate. And 75 years ago, while they took my grandparents to the ovens back in Europe, the free and civilized world stood aside, never lifting one finger. And today, so many years later, while these two crazy nations of ours are massacring each other without any mercy, while this genocide is taking place in Syria, and the Turks are killing Kurds with American permission, and atrocities wherever you look, and people are drowning in the Mediterranean like flies, and nobody cares. And the free and civilized world is still standing aside, doing nothing. And standing aside while a crime is being committed is also a crime. You don't have this privilege. We cannot allow it to happen because you see, we don't want you to be pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinians. This will not help us. We demand of you, be pro-peace, be against injustice, get involved, do something, don't stand aside. And my message as a Jew is that, and I'm a proud Jew with the deepest respect to my people, to my history, to my tradition. And I will say that ruling and oppressing and humiliating and occupying millions and millions of people for so many years without any democratic right is not Jewish, period. No two ways about it. And being against it is not anti-Semitism. If you get into an argument, you can quote me.
Thank you. Bassam, would you like to add to that?
I agree with Rami, of course, always. And Martin Luther King says, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Yes, we said don't take sides, but you need to act and not to keep silent. Because he adds, you are not only responsible for the words that you say, you are also responsible for the words that you didn't say at the time. You need to say something and to do something. So don't take a side and don't keep silence, of course.
Thank you. Those are very, very powerful words of advice.
I can offer you an angle, a way of supporting us. For example, there is the website of the American Friends of the Parent Circle. You can get into it. You can read more stories like ours. You can read about the activities, how we put those cracks in the walls. And down below, there is a little button. You can push it. It says donate.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily, though. So I'm going to keep asking questions while others are thinking of theirs. So, Bassam, you shared the story of going from essentially being a Holocaust denier to being a student of the Holocaust. And can you talk a little bit more about that process? Because you mentioned, seeing documentaries, seeing images and being persuaded, but I know also that I have encountered people who can see those same horrific images and file it away according to, well, this is just part of propaganda. This is, you can use actors, you can alter the video. How is it that you made that transformation? Because these things occurred before your daughter's death, correct?
I was 17 years old. I was maybe 18 years old. In fact, I want to make a research about the Holocaust as a lie, my imagination, because I want to understand the brutal behavior of the Israeli soldiers, because we are human beings, and how they act. They are killing machines. They have no feelings. Unbelievable. So I say to myself, after I watch the movie, if those soldiers watch such a movie, if it's true or a lie, then they come to my village, they will act in the same way. They will lose their humanity. And if it's happened to us, to the Palestinians, and it's a sign that I have no idea what's the meaning of the Nakba. I have no idea about the Nakba in that time. I said, if this happened to us, maybe we will lose our humanity and we will act as in a brutal way, the same. So I want like to try to justify their unbelievable brutality, to find an answer how they face with kids who throw stones and make no harm to anyone. They will close the village 3 days, curfew. They will collect the men from 16 to 16, the playground, even in winter, until they catch this big killer or terrorist, 13 years old kid or 10 years old kid. So I want to understand their behavior, if it's really happened or just a movie. Then, you know, we grow up, we start to think and to understand. If you allow yourself to know your enemy, the other side is narrative, story, claimation, you will pay respect for yourself, for your culture, for your narrative in the first place. So this was my motivation in order to know my enemy. And it's like a mission, because for that I studied the Hebrew as a mission. Then, as I said, you find yourself in a different place. Now you know. And we said, when you start to know, you start to suffer, because you have a mind and you are human beings and you know how to decide now. For that, I said, even if you have an enemy, educate yourself about this enemy. Then fight him according to your choice. You know why. So many times I ask some soldiers, why you are here in the checkpoint? What you are doing near Jericho in the desert? He said, I don't know. And sometimes he said, to protect Tel Aviv. Because he don't know. If he know, he will refuse to stand in this checkpoint because it's immoral, it's illegal, it's against his own humanity. Then it was for me as a mission to teach the Holocaust to the Palestinians, because I discovered it as a fact, and no one blame us that we are part of the Holocaust. Why we deny it? In fact, we play to the hands of the right wing, like Netanyahu. He's very pleased when he heard Ahmadinejad said there is no Holocaust, there is no 6 million. And who attacked him? Who answered Najad? The Germans. They said, we killed 6 million by ourselves, by our hands. So why we refuse it? It's not easy, but I discovered that because the Israelis, they occupied us, they killed us. So you will never admit their pain if they have pain. And we can see it in our lectures. In both sides, we say, do you know the suffering with the other side? The Palestinians said, why? The Israelis, are they suffering like us? No way. They love their kids as we love our kids? No. And we are mirrors to each other. Exactly. And we become the Jews of the Middle East. I wrote in my dissertation that the Israelis find their own Jews, unfortunately. And I pray that the Palestinians will never find their own Palestinians. We need to stop this circle of victimhood mentality, and the abused son become abused father.
Thank you. When you were speaking earlier and sharing your story, Rami, you shared the photo. I think the photo is that Smadar and Avir side by side. Would you be willing to show that again? I'm not sure if everyone saw it because someone else was talking at the time. Beautiful. Lovely, lovely children. Thank you so much. We're finishing up this week with hearing from your sons, because while the organization is called the Parent Circle, entire families are torn apart by these senseless killings as part of the violence. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role of your other family members in these processes, in particular Yigal and Arab?
In fact, as long as you are going to meet Arab and Eagle, we don't want to give you more information. We want you to discover them by yourself. But their way for me and Rami, it was like a miracle. It was very difficult how they find their own way. You know, you cannot enforce anyone to follow your steps, but through our education, to try to teach them how to go to this way. Always I said what Mahmoud Darwish says, that we raise up our kids. He says, I have no time to hate those who hates me. I am busy to love those who loves me. This is how we raise them up, and we are very proud of them.
Thank you. Thank you. I think no one on this at this session today can deny what you have said several times, both of you, that no one can listen to your stories and not be changed, not be moved deeply by your experience and what you have chosen to do in response to that, how easily it could have led to a path of greater hate and greater violence and perpetuating the cycle. And instead you've had the courage and the fortitude to not only not go down that path, but to take a very different path, a much more positive path. I just want to extend again deep thanks for your willingness to share these stories. It must be incredibly painful every time. And I hope, though, that as part of the process, having more people know about that and be willing to join in the cause is a small positive outcome from that process. I want to let everybody else know that we do have a series of these events, these stories of loss and reconciliation. I wish this were the only story to be told, and that these were the only parents who had faced such loss, but clearly that's not the case. And so tomorrow we'll be talking with two women who are also involved with the same organization, and we'll listen to Rami and Layla tell their stories, have an additional conversation about some of their activities, including viewing some of the videos from the Parents Circle International Women's Day activities, including the Flowers for Kamala Harris event that Rami made reference to earlier. If you didn't already sign up for some of those events, we also have some film showings, including things that Rami and Bassam made reference to, Our Power is Our Pain, that notion of how much the pain can be mobilized to be an effective force. And also, we didn't talk about it, but we are going to show the Within the Eye of the Storm documentary, which will provide some additional information on Rami and Bassam's stories and the intersection of their lives. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much, Rami and Bassam. If the two of you could stick around a few minutes longer to talk with me, I would be most appreciative.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Well,